It's Frank. We're in the shop with McKenna again on part 2 of a 4-part series on marketing and sponsorship in motorsports. So McKenna, now I've got my presentation, I've got all of my materials. Where do I go next?
Absolutely. So in our first video, Frank, we talked about the marketing presentation. So if you haven't seen that, please go back and watch that. But second, you're going to want to figure out who to prospect and how to go about that. And so there's a few different places that you can look. If you just simply Google a business directory in your local area, oftentimes that's a great place to look for different lists of companies. You can also just do a lot of Google searching if you're looking for something specific. Another tactic that I've actually used that has actually been effective, but also a bit less simple, is to actually just drive around your community and maybe look for businesses that you never noticed were even there. Something that I've used also is called the Book of Lists, and it's just another form of a directory. And so what you want to do once you have some kind of list of businesses is you want to figure out which would maybe be a good fit for your race team, and how to do that, it can be kind of difficult. And so there's certain types of companies that might be more likely to have a marketing budget for motorsports. And the biggest thing there would be looking for companies that market or sell directly to consumers. And so if it's a manufacturing company, they might not want to market to motorsports fans because they're not selling to motorsports fans. Now, with that being said, you don't necessarily need to get too wrapped up in what motorsports fans, what that really means necessarily. And so at the end of the day, if they're selling to consumers, motorsports fans are consumers regardless. A good example of this is one time I was driving down the road and I saw a hair salon literally on my street that had been there my whole life, and I sent them a letter. They ended up sponsoring me. And so everybody needs their haircut, but it's not necessarily an automotive related company. Another great way to meet sponsors is at networking events. And so rather than just having a list of companies, you can go to networking events. And so meetup.com is a website that has different business groups that you can go and meet with. There's also a lot of national organizations that you can check out. So the American Marketing Association is one where you can go to their events, and there's a lot of people that work in marketing at those. There's like an entrepreneurs organization and different types of organizations where you can meet with business people in your area.
So you've touched on it a little bit, but I'm curious, McKenna, how do I know who I'm targeting?
Another thing that's kind of important to point out is for racers, a lot of the companies that are kind of low-hanging fruit are actually around the racetrack, which can be good and bad. You want to try not to step on anybody else's toes with their deals. However, you do want to have companies, that you know or have connections to. So you might want to start by asking your friends and family too, like who do you know, or who could you maybe connect me with that might know somebody that would be interested in sponsoring me. So friends and family are great. That's step one. Now, step two is when you meet business owners, even if they can't do a deal with you, you might want to ask them who they could introduce you to, and it kind of creates this ripple effect. But the biggest thing is just creating like long-lasting relationships too, and just staying in touch. So you can't just meet somebody and go right into asking them for sponsorship, but get to know them and like actually get to know what their company does and understand what they do. A lot of my deals today started 6 years ago because I was at networking events 6 years ago that kind of led me to them now, or we were fostering those relationships over that time period. And so a lot of times people think you just get a deal over the off season, when in all actuality, some of these deals started a really long time ago. So for example, I was on meetup.com when I was 16 years old or 15, and I found a group for business owners to go to. So I went, it was just a small group of about 6 people, and we were in this office building. And in this office building was another person who wasn't even in the meeting, and they actually were a professor at the university that I went on to go to years later. And that professor got me into 1 Million Cups, which is an event that is all over the country. Anybody can go to it. And it's kind of like the show Shark Tank, but instead it's live in your community. So I went to Million Cups. I actually ended up getting to present at Million Cups. There was a gentleman in the audience that had me come speak to his Rotary Club. So I spoke to the Rotary Club, and the CEO of Delta Dental was in the audience at the Rotary Club, and we ended up doing a deal together. And so that was kind of a 6-year process to get to that point. And so it just goes to show how a lot of these deals, it's really important just to have relationships long lasting and to stay connected in these communities.
So man, this seems like a lot of work. I don't have any clue how you do it. Can you just touch a little bit on what it really takes to make this happen?
Absolutely. So I would say that most people that I talk to, their biggest issue when it comes to getting sponsors isn't necessarily the presentation or the different tactics that you use, but it's actually just making the effort. It is a ton of work, and a lot of people, if you ask them, how many sponsors have you approached, it's oftentimes less than 10 or oftentimes even 0. And so it's really important simply just to make the effort. The way I like to say it is that if you get to 100 tries and you still don't have a sponsor, you don't have to worry about the method. You know what I mean? Because with tries, you're gonna change. You're gonna get a sponsor at 100. Like, you're not gonna talk to 100 people and not get at least one sponsor, because every time you make an approach, you're gonna learn something from it. And so the biggest thing is just trying. I think a lot of people think that they're not equipped to do it or they're not good at it. You're not gonna get good unless you try, and I was not good either for many years. And so, but it does take hundreds and hundreds of tries, especially if, for me, I go outside of the racing industry a lot and try and bring new companies in, and that's even harder because you really have to sell them on motorsports and really have to educate them more, and that's just adds another layer. And so the biggest thing is just simply knowing how many tries it takes. I mean, I usually say for every 100 tries, I get one. Sometimes it's less than that, sometimes it's more, but regardless, I've spoken, to thousands of people or companies over the years, and it simply takes effort. So you have to be okay with hearing the word no. You have to be okay with just having a whole bunch of, even non-responses. You get a lot of non-responses, and so, but if you want something bad enough, then you just have to keep trying. And for me, that's how we fund my racing program. So if I want to go racing, you just have to keep trying until you hear the word yes.
Okay guys, that was part 2 of a 4-part series on marketing and sponsorship in motorsports. Tune in to part 3, which is the meeting and the pitch. Thanks for watching.